Now I want to turn to another issue which has been making news in recent days. I'm talking about the local bodies elections. This is what Bilawal Bhutto Zardari said in his speech in the National Assembly.
इस मुल्क में इस वक्त जहां पाकिस्तान पीपल्स पार्टी की हुकूमत है वहां बल्दियाती निजाम है, जहां मुस्लिम लीग की हुकूमत है वहां वो खौफजदा है, वो आज तक एक यूनियन काउंसिल की इलेक्शन करने के लिए तैयार नहीं है। क्या बात है आपकी कर रहे हो कि बल्दियाती निजाम।
Now when he fired off this criticism, of course PMLN had to respond. So this is what the answer came from a very important leader from the PMLN. Khwaja Saad Rafiq said, if you don't mind, when it comes to municipal elections, Mr. Bilawal Bhutto's demand is correct. Municipal elections in Lahore and Islamabad should be held as soon as possible, but holding elections in the style of Karachi's previous municipal elections would be better left undone altogether. Please don't implement a municipal system like Karachi's in Lahore. Obviously, this became a tit for tat, and then we started hearing voices from both sides criticizing each other. Now, actually, if you look at the whole local body structure in the provinces on merit, there is so much to criticize across the board. The fundamental reason is very simple. If you look at what the Constitution says about local bodies, things will become very clear. It says, Article 140A, each province shall by law establish a local government system and devolve political, administrative and financial responsibility and authority to the elected representatives of the local governments. Of course, elections to the local governments shall be held by the Election Commission of Pakistan. Now, this makes it extremely clear. The focus is on devolving political, administrative and financial responsibility and authority. This hasn't happened, not for years and years. Then the Supreme Court came out with an order which essentially reinforced what the Constitution says. But despite all of that, if you look at the status of the local bodies or the local governments in all the provinces, either the laws are weak or they are non-existent, or power has not been transferred, or authority has not been devolved. Bottom line, we have the devolution from the federal to the provincial level, and that's where it stops. It should not. So essentially, whenever we talk of any kind of political reform in Pakistan, one of the most urgent things that need to be done are local bodies that have the autonomy, the power and the authority that the Supreme Court details for them. That is not happening. Why is that? Let's discuss. So now let's do a deep dive into this topic. As I was discussing earlier, that this has become a bone of contention between the People's Party and the PMLN, which is actually funny because neither of the two parties are actually following the letter and spirit of the local government, local bodies or local governments law or what the Constitution says. So where are we today, and why is it that all political parties shy away from actually reforming our system so that it has a functioning, empowered third tier of democracy? To discuss this, I'm joined by Mr. Daniyal Aziz Chaudhary, senior politician and also the person who actually was initiated one of the best systems that we had of local governments. I'm talking about the system that we had during General Musharraf's time. It was called the National Reconstruction Bureau, and Daniyal Aziz Chaudhary Sahab was the chairman of that. So welcome to our show. Now, obviously, you know, if we look at that system, which was, I think, in many ways, it truly empowered the local governments. And then, even at that time, I remember, Daniyal Sahab, that whenever we had private conversations, people would say that whenever these parties would come back, they would reverse the system. And that is exactly what happened. So now we have a system which is, really nothing compared to what had originally been created. If you look at the Punjab set up now. Of course, we know that last week, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari criticized the PMLN for not having local bodies, and the PMLN said, well, you know, if look at the kind of system that you have, which is also not there. In Punjab, we have no system literally right now, and it's because of legal changes, frequent legal changes, power has shifted back and forth between local politicians and provincial bureaucrats, and currently now the bureaucrats control all the levers of power when it comes to local government. So what is wrong with Punjab? Why are they not legislating and implementing local bodies?
Well, this has always been the PMLN style of governance. If you recall, because there's basically a lack of technical understanding of how governance works or what the ideals are, and it was always more about doling out favors or the pork barrel politics to try and develop a political constituency, which wasn't there, to counter the PPP. This basically, they relied upon loyal bureaucrats. And throughout the PMLN's tenure, both in Punjab as well as at the federal level, you can list the names of the leading lights who were actually managing policy and managing the government. The political side was basically a fringe that used to be used sometimes to be paraded in and paraded out when they were required. And that's been the situation today, both in Punjab and the Federation.
The fact is that the current law, which they've passed in October 25, but it's nowhere in place. It's just there on the papers. So would it be correct to say that the system in Sindh, however truncated it is still better than the one that we have in Punjab?
Yeah, because you don't have one in Punjab. At least there were elections in Sindh. At least there's somebody sitting on those seats as mayors, as in the local government offices, in the districts, etc. And whatever little or truncated or muted voice they may have, or authority they may have, either financial or administrative, still they're at least there. So their body is still there.
Now, if you look at the Punjab one, clearly we have a Supreme Court a decision and order which says that all governments should have local bodies, and that order is an interpretation of Article 140A of the Constitution, which actually is very clear in terms of what it requires governments to do, but governments haven't done it. So in Punjab, the 2025 law gives heavy executive authority to unelected deputy commissioners instead of mayors, and the transfer of public funds, offices and assets from old district setups to new town councils is frozen. So basically, Punjab is saying that this is it, this is the best we can give, or is this like a transition and then we can expect the government to legislate something better than this?
It can't be a transition, because everything that the provincial leadership, the current chief minister and her team, is placing all of their performance on, which they expect accolades for, is all local government functions. I mean, you look at electric buses or overpasses, underpasses, or you look at this Suthra Punjab, or you look at making lights or cleaning up the city, or water supply schemes, schools, BHUs being privatized or contracted out, or what have you. All of that is in the domain of the local government. So if there is effective local government, what are they going to do? They don't know how to do anything else. So this sort of, in Urdu it's called sasti shorat, sort of cheap thrills. That's their approach to governance. And they think that these handouts are going to get them accolades, that if they give the people's own money back to them, they're somehow gracing them. And so therefore they should be loyal to them and beholden to them.
So obviously the big question then is that, if the constitution is very clear about what kind of local governments Pakistan should have, and the Supreme Court has also issued an order which is pretty clear in terms of what the governments should do, and the governments are not doing that.
Actually the Supreme Court isn't clear, and that's the whole problem. But when we get to that part where you talk about the Constitution, I can point that out at that
Let's come to that, but I want to quickly look at Sindh and what is the system there. So obviously they have had elections. In the past, they had in 2013 concentrated nearly all spending and administrative powers within the provincial government. The current law has created town municipal corporations to push urban governance to the local level. Is it in place? Yes, structurally local elections were held. Mayors and town chairmen are active in office, but local leaders have titles, but provinces still control major municipal finances. So that's a major problem, that even though they have the system in place, the provinces, the provincial government is not transferring power. And that's the sad story of Pakistan's local government experiment.
Absolutely. The problem is that where the bureaucratic and the political interests coincide is that the bureaucracy itself is hierarchical and it's unitary. Whereas what devolution requires is that you have to give some degree of financial and administrative autonomy at the local level. So when you have a hierarchy and you try and introduce autonomy, immediately there's a reaction.
Right.
And for the political side, they're very cautious and very desperate, because if you devolve to Faisalabad, Multan, Gujranwala, I'm giving the case of Punjab, or for example Hyderabad, Karachi or Sakkar or where have you, and you find out that because of that empowerment, suddenly there's a Mamdani hiding around every corner, and there's a Sadiq Khan developing in Faisalabad, what's going to happen to your kith and kin who you have to impose and what they have to be cheered for? Because here are the people that are actually in the streets and localities of Pakistan making it happen, making it work. And I'm deliberately using those two names because those are the two top capitals of the world, and if Pakistanis and other people that come from a similar background can do it there, they can certainly do it here. But the problem is they're not the transplanted types. They're real. So if we get a real leadership coming up from the grassroots level, which is actually part of the function of the local level, where it's a training ground for people to rise to higher office after they've learned the ropes there, then that's the problem, because we want to come from a family fiefdom style, top down.
And the sad part is that Article 140A was introduced into the Constitution as a result of the 18th Amendment, which was passed by these very political parties. So they haven't transferred power, they've transferred it from the center to the provinces, but stopped there.
It wasn't just that. This was introduced when the Constitution was reframed under General Musharraf. But thereafter, the 18th Amendment Committee under Raza Rabbani unanimously decided that they're going to remove all of the black stains that have come because of various martial laws from the Constitution. And one of the things they did is they not only kept Article 140A as it is, but they increased it by saying that the Election Commission of Pakistan will hold all of the local government elections. So they added more teeth to it. So it's not that they don't know what's right. They know what's right. That was passed unanimously, by the way. Unanimously.
Absolutely.
So the point is that it's not that they don't know. But then as soon as they'd done that, they proceeded to erase the whole thing.
And it's all the parties have been dragging their feet. And if we, for example, if you go to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, where the PTI is in power, and if you look at the law there, obviously, they've been laying a lot of focus and emphasis on local governments.
Well, one second. The whole, I know for a fact, and this is a very good case study, that the PTI leadership was very pro-local government, especially their founding chairman.
Yes.
And what ended up happening is that they became the worst political party in terms of what they did to empowerment at the local level.
How was that?
Because they eliminated the district tier. It's your first point on this one. On this
so
thing.
they in 1922 they completely deleted the traditional district tier, shifting power down to smaller tehsil and village councils.
So all of the district offices where their lower formations are at the tehsil and lower, their headquarters are at the district level. So when you don't have a government there, then you've just eliminated the whole connection. So you're down to the sea level, where basically you're just dealing with graveyards or water supply scheme or sanitation, stuff like that, which is nothing. The real function of education, health, law and order, taxation, land administration, so on and so forth. I can keep counting: livestock, forestry, fisheries. Keep naming. Yeah. That's all at the district level. What you'll find down at the tehsil level is the third tier, fourth tier of their administrators, and they have to do what they're being told by their headquarters, not by what the tehsil council has done them.
And so this was done. What was the rationale?
The rationale was to protect the bureaucracy, because they wanted to reintroduce the executive magistracy, which is unconstitutional. And the reason that they wanted to not have a district tier was because the District Public Safety and Police Complaints Commission, which held sway as a replacement for the erstwhile district magistrate, that would then become formed, because there's a Supreme Court order that says get the elections done and form these. So they designed a system in which there were no district councillors, because the majority of that membership is from district council. So no district council, no police complaints authority. Therefore, the deputy commissioner again becomes able to fill that vacuum. So in order to try and perpetuate, they didn't get that either. And they didn't get that in, so they're now completely out of it.
And then actually they've gone a couple of steps even ahead than that, and they've slashed the number of devolved departments at the local level from 24 just to 9. They've put funding cuts, and also, of course, there's some legal gridlock, but obviously they're exiting active status because elected mayors and chairmen are in office, but their 4-year tenure are actively expiring in mid-26.
The saddest thing about all of this is that the so-called Riyasat-e-Medina model now, which essentially denuded local democracy, denuded the constitution, virtually eliminated, obliterated the local tier, is now being copied by Punjab under PMLN. Because the handmaidens of the bureaucracy are now presenting that to them as the solution, because otherwise they'll have to make police complaints commissions at each district in Punjab. So instead of that, you're seeing this weird legislation of Habitual Offenders Act and all the stuff that to try and again get the judicial powers in the executive by hook or by crook.
Let's go to Balochistan, the situation there. Now, obviously, they maintain a strict rural-urban divide, heavily controlled by provincial bureaucrats. The current law kept the 2010 framework but amended council sizes and reserved seats for women and minorities. Is it in place? Yes, structurally finalized its multi-stage elections, mayors and chairmen are sitting in offices. But again, the provincial government routinely bypasses local heads, having them largely as ceremonial. The same story again.
So one of the things that's more important for Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan is that in any counterinsurgency action, one of the first things that you want to do is get the local populace on your side, because that actually turns, if it goes against you, that turns into the support base. And some have likened it, some historians like David Glula, others, that becomes the water within which the insurgent fish can swim. So they get hiding there, they get information from there, they get resources from there, so on and so forth. So one of the best ways to block that from happening is to have the local population and their leadership with you in terms of maintaining law and order, rather than against you trying to.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point.
And in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan, particularly where it's most sensitive, no amount of chowkis and roadblocks and other stuff is going to get you security. Ultimately, it's going to be about the local population working with the administration to ensure security. This word right here, this is the problem. The judiciary does not want to commit to this word. What does it say? 1 second. Each province shall by law establish a local government system and do what? Devolve. Not centralize. So far, since 2001, each province that made a local government law has centralized. They couldn't do that. They had to devolve. Devolve what? Political, administrative, and financial authority and responsibility to whom? The elected representatives. So all the slides that you were showing before go directly against this. Why? Because the judiciary refuses to interpret this word. The intertemporal nature, that basically this was a protection for the financial, administrative, and political authority and responsibility granted to them in 2001. This came afterwards. So any law that you would make thereafter, what does it have to do?
Devolve.
Yeah, you have to read this together. You can't just delete this and say, oh, we read it to centralize.
But if somebody wants even this part to be implemented, they don't really need an interpretation, because if you read it, it's absolutely clear what the constitution is saying.
But the way Pakistan's system works is that you have to, when somebody is violating the constitution, it has to be interpreted by the High Court and the Supreme Court. That's their real job.
All right.
Not everything else that they're doing, going to hospitals and pushing around nurses and whatever.
So now, if we want this done, one option you said is that, for example, if the judiciary interprets this even more clearly. But again, frankly speaking, you and I know that if the provinces or the political parties don't want to go down this route, they'll find like 100 million
That's
other
not true.
thing.
The Lahore High Court, in a judgment that was chaired by the bench was chaired by the Chief Justice of the Lahore High Court, Mr. Shah. Subsequently, he came to the Supreme Court, made an excellent decision in which they looked at Germany, they looked at and they interpreted the Constitution very well.
So if things have to change, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But anyway, this is something that we will continue to cover in one form or the other. Thank you so much.
It's very close to my heart.
Thank you so much for coming today. We will take a break here. When we